Hey, good morning. My name's Greg, and Chris, thank you for that. And this guy, I was wondering, I kept hearing like a second voice, Mike, or were you doing the bass line too at the same time? Did you guys hear that? Who was doing that? Who was doing that? That was you on a microphone. Okay. I was like, wow. That's pretty impressive. My name's Greg, and I'm really excited to be with you this morning. Thank you for coming. And is it mandatory, or are you here on your own? Yeah, Evie? Both? Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here. If you don't mind, my wife wanted to come, and I'm from Houston, and she couldn't come, but she wanted me to take a picture. So before I get started, is this inappropriate? I want to do a selfie with all you guys in the background. Okay, is that cool? Okay, so if you don't mind, would you stand up and act like you're happy to be here, wave or something? So okay, here we go. All right. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you very much. She'll be happy. Love needs to look like something, right? Love needs to look like something. I think I'm going to change my whole message. That's the message, right? Love actually does look like something. There's a candle in your heart that's ready to be kindled, writes the poet Rumi. There's a void in your soul ready to be filled. You feel it, don't you? Remind those who tell you otherwise that love comes to you of its own accord, willingly and gladly. And the yearning for it cannot be learned in any school. There's a candle in your heart ready to be filled, be kindled, a void in your soul ready to be filled. You feel it, don't you? Maybe we feel the love as a longing, right, for, something more. Maybe we feel it as a hoping for something better. It could be that we feel it as a sense of emptiness that's created by something that we once had, but for whatever reason we've lost, or it's been taken away. Or we feel it as a lack of something we're missing, that we know we've always needed, but we're not sure that we've ever had. So I think this yearning to be loved and to love is built into the fabric of what it means to be you and what it means to be me and what it means to be a person, what it means to be people together. God has built this into who we are. And my hunch is that some of what Jesus says as an invitation to all of us of what this life means is baked into this. When he says, invites you and invites me to this simple way of occurring in the world. Be compassionate, just as your Father is compassionate. That's it. Be compassionate. Be compassion. As God is compassion. Compassion is the heart of God, right? And it's also at the heart of what it means to be human, what it means to be you, and what it means to be me. It's where the divine and the human actually meet together in our lives and in our collective life together. Compassion agitates the spirit. It activates our attentiveness to this divine love that connects us to God and connects us to one another. It's the one thing the one thing that moves us to dismantle the barriers within us, close the gaps between us, and liberate us from the prison of our pain. It's the one thing. With Compassion's movement, I think, comes this gift of God, right? Of experiencing what it actually looks like and feels like to be loved. And, well, to love as Jesus knew his own belovedness and showed others theirs. So I think when it comes down to it, the heart of the spiritual life is this: a growing and deepening, transforming awareness of your belovedness and belonging to a community that beholds you in such a way that reminds you of that when you forget. Because you do forget. And we all need to be reminded of that by the people around us. So I work with, largely with juveniles in the juvenile justice system, and with an organization called Houston Revision. So I spend a lot of time in lockup. Kids that are doing detention, kids that have been certified as adults that are serving long-term adult sentences, and I spend a lot of time with them. One of those kids named Jose called me, and he said that he needed a job, which a lot of our guys need jobs, because when you grow up in Houston, when you come from a destabilized family, and you grow up with gangs around you, gang territory, gang affected, your life is full of trauma, you don't go to school, you don't have much of an education, you don't even have a GED, you get in trouble with the juvenile justice system from the time you're 11 or 12, you spend all your years trying to navigate that, well, your life is kind of derailed. And so he doesn't have an education, he doesn't have much of anything. And he's 19, and he needs a job because he's got a baby on the way. He's got to support. He said, "I got to support my baby mama, and I got to support my baby on the way." So he said, "Can you help me?" So I have a friend who owns this a roofing company, and so I set up an interview with my friend, and I pick Jose up, and we go to a Tex-Mex place, and we sit down and have lunch, and it's not really an interview because Jose has a job if he wants it. After the interview, I said, "Jose, what do you think, man? Are you in 100%?" And he goes, "Yeah, 110. And it strikes me that this is in November. It's going to be cold the next day. Cold for Houston, right? I mean, in the low 60s, right? In the 50s. But it's going to be cold the next day." And so I asked Jose, I said, "Do you have anything for cold weather?" He goes, "I got this." And he points this flimsy little hoodie he's got on. So on the way back to his place, we pull into a Fiesta, which is like a Walmart. I said, "Let's get you some clothes." So we go in and we get him some boots and gloves and socks and pants and those kinds of things for the work. And then we pass this long row of winter coats, just from front to back. It's like the 2-week period of every year when winter coats make their appearance in Houston. From front to back, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of them. I said, "Jose, look at this. Look, we need to get you a coat." I said, "Pick whatever you want." So he goes up and down the aisle, and he's feeling with his hand the freshness of the fabric and the newness of these coats, right? And finally, I say, "Why don't you try one on?" So he finally does. He tries one on, and this one is too small. Tries another one on, it's too big. And finally, he finds one, he puts it on, he zips it up, and then look, it's like this one is just right. And so I'm on one side of the coats are between us, and I'm looking across this thing, and I catch something I've never seen before. This young kid who's been traumatized all of his life, who when he was born, his mother told him she did not want him, tied him up with an electrical cord and stuffed him in the closet when he was a baby burn marks, scars on his skin from where she put out her cigarettes. Shut down because of the trauma in his life. And I look at him and he's standing almost statuesque. And he's rubbing his hands, palms down on his coat like this. His chin is up. And he looks to the left and he looks to the right as if to see if there's anybody who notices this person who is standing before them. And then he turns to me and he says, "Hey, G, how I look, yo?" There's a slight grin on his face, and I don't know what it was, but I caught sight of something that I hadn't seen much of before. Worth, worthiness, dignity, belovedness. And I said, "Oh, Jose, that coat was made just for you." And so we bought the coat. There is a candle in your heart, right? Ready to be kindled. There's a void in your soul ready to be filled. You feel it, don't you? I guess that how I look, you don't have to be a gang member to ask that question, right? We all ask that question. All of us ask that question in one way or another. Maybe not in the middle of a crowded store, right? And out loud like that. But we all ask that question. And that question even silently competes with the voices fighting to gain a foothold in our hearts. All the voices that speak to our worthlessness, our lack of dignity, all the competing voices of the society that threaten the fact that we are God's beloved. That question speaks. And it's not so much of a question of do I look good, right? It's not a question of do I look good or does this coat fit? It's more of a question, am I okay? Does anybody notice? Does anybody see me? Does anybody care? Am I loved? And I guess, am I lovable? We all ask the question. As much as we pretend otherwise, right? It's a question that always requires someone else to answer for us. Look, if you stood in front of a mirror today, went back to your room or whatever, and stood in front of the mirror by yourself and you ask yourself the question, "How I look, yo?" It just doesn't have the same effect. We all need someone else to answer that question for us. Why? Because we all need someone else to see us with compassion. We all need someone who sees us, who really, really sees us. Who sees us in a way that leaves no doubt that we matter. That we're not out here all alone. Sees more in us than we see in ourselves. Sees more than all the haters around us see. More than the fears and the self-condemnation that we feel within us. We all need someone to see us with compassion, to behold us as beloved. And it's important not to miss the mutuality of this beloved belonging. That my awareness of belovedness and your awareness of your belovedness are inextricably tied together, held by this God who is love, held in love together, holding all things together in love. So I've come to believe that any spirituality that separates your experience of being loved, of your loving acceptance from mine and mine from yours, is not healthy. And it's probably dangerous. One more story and I'll wrap it up. One of the places I've spent a lot of time in is Texas Department of Corrections, maximum security prison called the Clemens Unit, second oldest prison in the state of Texas, built in 1888, no heat, no air conditioning. It built on an old slave plantation, as a lot of prisons are. That's another story. And the nickname the inmates have given this place is Burning Hell. It's atrocious. It's awful. All the kids who are certified as adults between 14 and 17 years old are serving adult sentences go there. Over the years, we've built a program, a community inside that unit. And so we take volunteers in on the first Friday of every month, and we do basically what amounts to a church youth group. We do music, and we bring in 35 pizzas, and there's a message, and we build relationships, connections with all these kids who are inmates in the Texas Department of Corrections. On one day, we're doing our thing, and then I get up to do a message, and I'm going to talk about how we all belong to one another, and we all belong to God. And to start that, I throw out the question, when in your life did you feel like you most belonged? And so volunteers and kids around these tables are talking about that. One says, when I was on a basketball team, or when my mom says she loves me. And then there's this kid in the back who had arrived 2 days before. He went through the foster system and got in trouble with the law because he got in a fight in a residential home with a foster sibling. And by Texas law, or the policy of the Department of Family and Protective Services is, if you get in a fight with a foster sibling, then they have to call the cops. He has no one to advocate for him, no one in his life. And he gets sucked into the system, and he gets certified as an adult for aggravated assault. He ends up in burning hell. And he's sitting across the table from one of our volunteers named Seth. And Seth turns to him and he says, hey, Luis, what about you? When in your life did you feel like you most belonged? And there's this pause, and he turns to Seth and he looks him in the eye, and he says, as if it's obvious, well, right here. Now. With you. Right here. Now. With you. There's something divine that happens when someone cares enough to go into a place like burning hell to see someone who has never been seen in his life and to recognize his belovedness. And not only does Luis recognize his own beloved belonging, but Seth begins to recognize his. There is a candle in your heart, ready to be kindled. There's a void in your soul, ready to be filled. You feel it, don't you? To the one who beholds, we belong. And to belong is to be loved. And to be loved, well, I'm not sure it gets any better than that. What do you think? Stay here because Fallon is coming up to give you an announcement.